I funded my own replacement. 3 years of savings, $180,000 from my inheritance, and my grandmother's diamond earrings that I pawned when we were short on cash. All of it went into opening my husband's dream restaurant. At the grand opening party, in front of 200 guests, he raised his champagne glass and announced that his business partner Megan was the true visionary behind everything. Then he handed her the keys, not symbolic keys, the actual keys to the restaurant I owned on paper. She kissed him on the mouth. Everyone applauded. I stood there in the dress I'd bought on clearance because we couldn't afford luxuries, watching the woman my husband had been sleeping with accept ownership of my investment. The salmon canapés I'd made myself because we couldn't afford a caterer suddenly tasted like ash in my mouth. That was 6 months ago. Today, I'm sitting in my own apartment, drinking coffee from a mug that says plot twist and laughing at how accurate that is. But let me start from the beginning, because you need to understand how a woman with an MBA from Northwestern ended up making her own appetizers for a party celebrating her own financial destruction. I met my husband at a friend's wedding in Boston. I was 32, a financial analyst at a consulting firm, finally comfortable after years of student loans and entry-level salaries. He was 35, charming, with this dream of opening a farm-to-table restaurant that would change how people thought about sustainable dining. I loved his passion. That was my first mistake. We dated for 8 months before he moved into my apartment. His lease was ending, and he was between jobs. The restaurant industry is brutal, he explained. I understood. I'd supported myself through business school while my classmates had trust funds. I knew what it meant to struggle. Within a year, we were engaged. Within 2 years, married. And within 3 years, I had depleted my savings, cashed out my $401k, sold the diamond earrings my grandmother left me, and maxed out 2 credit cards, all for the restaurant that was supposed to be our future. My husband had found the perfect location in Portland, Maine. A historic building downtown, exposed brick, original hardwood floors. The lease alone was $8,500 a month. Then came the renovations, the commercial kitchen equipment, the liquor license, the furniture, the branding, the website, the soft opening events. Every time I looked at our bank account, my stomach dropped. But my husband would hold my hands, look into my eyes, and say, "Baby, this is an investment in us. In our future. When the restaurant takes off, we'll pay everything back, and then some." I believed him. That was my second mistake. What I didn't know was that while I was skipping lunches to save money, while I was wearing the same 3 work outfits on rotation, while I was telling my mother I couldn't fly home for Thanksgiving because flights were too expensive, my husband was paying himself a salary from the restaurant account. $6,500 a month. For management duties at a restaurant that wasn't even open yet. I also didn't know about Megan. Megan was his consultant. A restaurant industry expert who was helping with the menu, the vendor relationships, the staffing plan. She had 15 years of experience, he said. She was invaluable. She was also 28, blonde, and apparently invaluable in ways I couldn't compete with. But I'm getting ahead of myself. The grand opening was scheduled for a Saturday in September. My husband had planned the whole thing. 200 guests, including local food critics, potential investors, and everyone who was anyone in Portland's dining scene. He'd ordered champagne, hired a jazz quartet, and rented those beautiful Edison bulb string lights that made everything look magical. "How are we paying for this?" I asked, looking at the invoices. "Megan's handling it," he said. "She got us some sponsorships." I should have asked more questions. I should have demanded to see the books. I was a financial analyst, for God's sake. I looked at numbers for a living. But when it came to my own marriage, I was blind. The week before the opening, I noticed my husband was distant. He was at the restaurant until midnight every night, finalizing details. He barely looked at me when he came home. When I tried to talk about the event, he waved me off. "It's all under control. Don't worry about it." On the day of the grand opening, I spent 6 hours making canapés because my husband said we couldn't afford the caterer's appetizer add-ons. I made 300 smoked salmon bites with dill cream cheese on homemade crostini. My feet ached. My back hurt. But I kept thinking about how proud I would be when people complimented the food at my husband's dream restaurant. Our restaurant. Our dream. That's what I kept telling myself. I wore a dress I'd bought on sale at Nordstrom Rack 3 years earlier, My husband didn't notice. He was already at the restaurant when I arrived, adjusting his new Italian suit, the one he'd bought because first impressions matter to investors. The restaurant looked stunning. The Edison lights created a warm glow. The tables were set with white linens and fresh flowers. The bar gleamed. Everything I'd sacrificed for was finally real, tangible, beautiful. And then I saw Megan. She was wearing a red designer dress that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. Her hair was professionally styled. Her makeup was flawless. She was standing next to my husband, and his hand was on the small of her back. Not the small of her back like a business colleague. The small of her back like she belonged to him. My stomach clenched, but I pushed the feeling down. I was being paranoid. My husband loved me. He'd said so that morning. We were building something together. The guests arrived. The champagne flowed. My salmon canapés disappeared within 30 minutes. Everyone loved them. I stood near the kitchen, watching people enjoy the food I'd made, feeling a flicker of pride through my exhaustion. At 8 p.m., my husband clinked his glass for attention. The room quieted. I moved closer, ready to stand beside him for this moment we'd worked so hard for. But he didn't look at me. He was looking at Megan. "Thank you all for coming," he said, his voice carrying across the room. 3 years ago, I had a dream. And tonight, that dream becomes reality. But I didn't do this alone. I want to raise a glass to the person who made this possible. The visionary. The one who believed in this restaurant when no one else did. The person who has been my partner in every sense of the word. My heart swelled. This was it. He was going to acknowledge me. All those sacrifices, all those skipped meals and pawned jewelry and depleted savings, it was all worth it. To Megan, he said. My partner. My inspiration. The real heart of this restaurant. The room erupted in applause. I stood frozen, my champagne glass halfway to my lips. Surely I'd misheard. Surely he was about to turn to me and say, and of course, to my wife, who funded every penny of this dream. Instead, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a set of keys. The keys to the restaurant. My restaurant. The one I'd mortgaged my future for. Megan, he said, I want you to have these. Because this place is as much yours as it is mine. She took the keys, her eyes glistening with tears. And then she kissed him. Not on the cheek. On the mouth. In front of 200 people. Everyone applauded again. I heard someone say, "They're so cute together." Another voice said, "I didn't know they were a couple." I stood there, invisible. The wife who had funded everything. Reduced to a spectator at her own financial execution. My husband finally looked at me. Our eyes met across the room, and I saw it no guilt, no shame, just a cold calculation. He'd known exactly what he was doing. He'd planned this. Oh, and thank you to everyone who supported us along the way, he added, almost as an afterthought. He didn't say my name. I don't remember walking to the bathroom. I just remember locking myself in a stall, sitting on the closed toilet lid, and staring at my hands. The hands that had typed up loan applications. The hands that had signed over my inheritance. The hands that had made 300 canapés for my own humiliation party. My phone buzzed. A text from my sister. How's the big night going? I couldn't respond. I stayed in that bathroom for 20 minutes. When I finally emerged, my husband was surrounded by potential investors, laughing, gesturing expansively. Megan was at his side, her hand possessively on his arm. No one noticed when I walked out the front door. My car was parked 3 blocks away. I'd had to park far because the closer spots were reserved for VIP guests. Even my parking spot had been taken from me. I drove home in silence. No radio. No thoughts. Just the white noise of shock. When I got to our apartment, I sat on the couch in the dark. My phone was blowing up. Missed calls from my husband. Texts that started concerned and grew increasingly angry. Where are you? This is embarrassing. People are asking where my wife is. Are you seriously doing this right now? You're ruining the biggest night of my career. Call me back. Elena. This is childish. Fine. Don't answer. We'll talk about this later. 23 missed calls by midnight. Not 87, like in some dramatic movie. 23 was enough to prove he'd noticed I was gone. Not enough to prove he actually cared. He came home at 2 a.m., reeking of champagne and Megan's perfume. I was still on the couch. What the hell was that? He demanded. You just left? You embarrassed me in front of everyone. I looked at him. This man I'd given everything to. This man who'd just handed my investment to his mistress. Who is Megan? I asked quietly. She's my business partner. You know that. Is she in the business of sleeping with married men? Or is that a side hustle? His face went through several expressions: shock, denial, calculation. He settled on offense. You're being paranoid. You're always so insecure. That's your problem, Elena. You don't trust me. I trusted you with my grandmother's earrings, I said. I trusted you with $180,000 from my inheritance. I trusted you with my $401k. How much did I give you, total? He shifted. This isn't about money. How much? I don't know, maybe $347,000. I'd calculated it the week before, when I was reconciling our accounts. $347,000 of my money, plus 2 maxed out credit cards at 24.99% interest, plus my grandmother's diamonds. All for a restaurant that you just gave keys to your girlfriend. She's not my girlfriend. She's a business partner. And those keys were symbolic. Then get them back. Silence. Get them back, I repeated. Call her right now and tell her the keys were a mistake. Tell her the restaurant belongs to your wife. Who funded it? He laughed. Actually laughed. Elena, you don't understand how business works. Megan has connections. Investors. She's the one who's going to make this restaurant successful. You just provided the startup capital. Just provided the startup capital. 3 years of sacrifice reduced to a footnote. I want a divorce, I said. The words came out before I'd fully formed the thought. But the moment I said them, I knew they were right. Whatever love I'd had for this man died in that restaurant, watching him hand my future to another woman. His face changed. The condescension melted into something else. Fear? Calculation? I couldn't tell. Let's not be hasty, he said, suddenly soft. You're upset. I understand. Maybe I could have handled the speech better. But divorce? That's extreme. It's necessary. Think about this, Elena. If we divorce, we'll have to split everything. The restaurant. The debt. It'll be a mess. Lawyers will get involved. Is that what you want? I looked at him clearly for maybe the first time in years. He wasn't worried about losing me. He was worried about losing my money. I'll be sleeping at my sister's, I said. I'll send movers for my things next week. I packed a bag in 15 minutes. He followed me around the apartment, alternating between threats and pleading. When I walked out the door, he was still talking. The next morning I called a divorce attorney. Her name was Patricia Chen, and she came highly recommended by my sister's colleague who had gone through her own nightmare divorce. Tell me everything, Patricia said. So I did. The inheritance. The 401k. The credit cards. The earrings. The restaurant. Megan. The keys. All of it. When I finished, Patricia was quiet for a moment. Then she said, I'm going to be honest with you, Elena. What you've described is financial infidelity on a massive scale, but proving it will require forensic accounting. That's expensive. Are you prepared for that? I had maybe $3,000 left in my checking account. My credit cards were maxed. I was about to pay for a divorce from my own emergency fund. I'll find a way, I said. Patricia nodded. Good, because I have a feeling there's more to this story than what you know. She was right. The forensic accountant was named David. He was 60 years old, quietly intense, and had spent 30 years unraveling financial fraud. He asked for everything: bank statements, tax returns, credit card bills, any documents related to the restaurant. I gave him access to our joint accounts and the LLC paperwork I'd signed. My husband had always handled the restaurant finances, but I was technically listed as a 70% owner. My husband was 30%. Megan, officially, was nothing. Just a consultant. David called me a week later. You might want to sit down, he said. What David found was worse than I'd imagined. My husband had been systematically looting the restaurant account for months. The $6,500 monthly salary was just the beginning. There were also $15,000 in equipment purchases that went to a company owned by Megan's brother. No equipment was ever delivered. $32,000 in marketing expenses paid to a firm that didn't exist. $8,000 a month in consulting fees paid directly to Megan for 18 months. $144,000 total. A secret bank account, not listed on any of our financial documents, containing $267,000. Where did that $267,000 come from? It came from investors. While I was skipping lunches, my husband was quietly raising money from investors, friends, family friends, people in the restaurant industry. He'd told them I was the money person and didn't need to be involved in the funding conversations. They'd written checks totaling over $300,000. Some of it went to the restaurant. Most of it went to the secret account. He'd committed wire fraud, investor fraud, tax fraud. And he'd done it all while telling me we were broke. This is going to be a bigger case than just divorce, David said. You might want to contact the authorities. I did. The FBI took my case seriously. Investor fraud crosses state lines, apparently, and some of my husband's investors were from Massachusetts. They interviewed me twice, took all of David's documentation, and told me to sit tight. Meanwhile, my divorce proceeded. Patricia filed for temporary spousal support, asset freeze, and full forensic accounting disclosure. My husband's lawyer tried to fight it, but once the FBI got involved, their leverage evaporated. My husband called me exactly once during this period. I let it go to voicemail. Elena, we need to talk. This has gotten out of hand. The FBI? Really? That's going to ruin me. Is that what you want? To ruin the father of your future children? Call me back. We can work this out. I didn't call him back. The divorce took 8 months. In that time, I moved into a small studio apartment, picked up freelance consulting work, and started therapy. My therapist helped me understand that what I'd experienced wasn't just infidelity or financial mismanagement. It was financial abuse, a systematic pattern of manipulation and control that left me dependent and blind. You were groomed, she said. He isolated you financially and made you believe that your sacrifice was love. It wasn't. It was control. The final divorce settlement was more than I dared to hope. Because of the fraud David uncovered, the court awarded me the $267,000 from the secret account minus legal fees. My full 70% ownership of the restaurant, which I promptly sold to a restaurant group for $340,000. Spousal support of $3,500 a month for 2 years paid from my ex-husband's wages. And my grandmother's earrings. That last one was personal. I'd thought the earrings were gone forever. Pawned to cover a plumbing emergency at the restaurant. But David found the pawn receipt. My husband had never actually pawned them. He'd taken them to a safe deposit box, one of 3 he'd hidden from me. They were waiting for me at the bank, along with several other pieces of jewelry I recognized from his mother's collection. He'd been planning his exit for years. He just hadn't planned on getting caught. The FBI investigation resulted in federal charges. My ex-husband is currently serving 18 months in federal prison for wire fraud. Megan was named as a co-conspirator, but took a plea deal, 3 years probation and $89,000 in restitution to the defrauded investors. The restaurant closed 6 weeks after the grand opening. Without my money propping it up, the whole thing collapsed. The local food blog called it the most spectacular failure in Portland dining history. As for me, I'm doing something I never expected. I'm writing. It started as journaling, my therapist's suggestion for processing the trauma. But the more I wrote, the more I realized that my story might help other women recognize the signs I'd missed. The subtle financial manipulation. The isolation. The gaslighting. The way we're in this together can become a trap. I pitched my story to a few publications. One of them bit. Then another. And another. Now I write a monthly column for a women's financial magazine about recognizing and recovering from financial abuse in relationships. My column is called The Real Cost. Last month, I gave a talk at a women's entrepreneurship conference, 300 people in the audience. When I finished, a woman approached me with tears in her eyes. I'm in that situation right now, she whispered. My boyfriend wants me to invest my savings in his business. He says it's an investment in us. In our future. I took her hands, looked into her eyes, and said, before you invest a single dollar, see an accountant, see a lawyer. Get everything in writing. And ask yourself, if this investment disappeared tomorrow, would you still have yourself? She nodded, crying. I handed her my card. Call me if you need to talk. That night, I went home to my studio apartment. I made myself a nice dinner, actual food, not stale crackers or whatever was cheapest. I poured a glass of wine. I put on music. And I thought about that grand opening night, about standing invisible in the restaurant I'd funded, watching my husband hand my dreams to another woman. The bill for my betrayal had been $347,000. The cost of my freedom? Worth every penny. I'm not angry anymore. I'm not even sad. I'm just free. My ex-husband writes me letters from prison sometimes. He wants me to know he's sorry. He wants me to know he's changed. He wants me to know that when he gets out, he'd like to make things right. I don't respond. Some debts can never be repaid. And some investments in yourself, in your own future, in your ability to walk away from what destroys you are the only ones worth making. If you're reading this and seeing yourself in my story, I want you to know, it's not too late. It's never too late to stop funding your own replacement. It's never too late to walk out of a party that was never really for you. And it's never too late to raise your own glass to yourself. To your freedom. To the life you're about to build with no one's permission but your own. The restaurant is a yoga studio now. I walk past it sometimes on my way to the farmer's market. The Edison lights are gone. The exposed brick has been painted white. Everything that made it ours has been erased. I don't feel sad when I see it. I feel grateful. Because every time I pass that building, I remember the woman who walked out the door that night. Invisible, broke, destroyed. And I think about who she became. Someone whose voice matters. Someone whose story helps others. Someone who finally understands that the best investment she ever made wasn't in a restaurant, or a marriage, or someone else's dreams. It was in herself. That's the ending I would have written if I'd known how the story would go. But real life doesn't work that way. Real life gives you the plot twist first and makes you write the meaning later. So here's the meaning I've written. You are not what someone else does to you. You are not the money you lost or the trust that was broken. You are not invisible, even when someone tries to make you disappear. You are the person who walks out the door. You are the person who picks up the phone and calls a lawyer. You are the person who rebuilds. And that person, she's worth more than any restaurant, any marriage, any dream that requires her to be small. My mug says plot twist, and every morning when I drink my coffee, I smile. Because I am the plot twist. And the story's just getting started.